Ladies and gentlemen, life is not about proving yourself to the world. It is about discovering yourself within. Too often, we are caught in the noise of society expectations, judgments, comparisons. We waste our precious energy trying to convince others of our worth. But let me tell you today, if you focus on yourself, you will never need to prove anything to anyone. Your results, your growth, your transformation, they will shock everyone who ever doubted you. Self-awareness is the very foundation upon which all personal growth and transformation are built. Imagine a person who sets out on a journey without knowing where they are, without a map, and without any sense of direction. No matter how fast they walk or how determined they are only moving in circles. That is exactly what life looks like without self-awareness. You might be working hard, you might even be achieving things, but deep inside, you may still feel empty, unfulfilled, or confused because you never pause to understand who you truly are. To focus on yourself in a meaningful way, the first thing you must do is take a step back and meet the real you. Who are you beyond the labels that society has given you? Are you just a student, a professional, a parent, or a child? Or are you someone much deeper, someone whose potential has not even been fully discovered yet? Self-awareness means peeling away the layers of what the world has told you to be and reconnecting with your authentic self. One of the biggest mistakes we make in life is defining ourselves by what others think. If people call us successful, we wear that label proudly. If they call us failures, we sink into despair. But here's the truth, no one knows you better than yourself. The world only sees a fraction of you, the part you allow them to see. But within you lies a universe of talents, strengths, weaknesses, dreams, and possibilities. Only when you pause to reflect can you begin to understand that universe. So how do we build self-awareness? The first step is reflection. Every day, set aside a few minutes just for yourself. No phone, no distractions, no noise. Ask yourself, what did I do well today? What mistakes did I make? How did I respond to challenges? These small questions create powerful insights. Over time, you start noticing patterns. Maybe you are quick to lose patience. Maybe you have a gift for creativity. Maybe you work best under pressure. These reflections guide you to know yourself better. And knowing yourself better is the first step toward improving yourself. Another important aspect of self-awareness is understanding your strengths and weaknesses. Many of us either underestimate ourselves or overestimate our abilities. Some people never take risks because they don't believe they are capable. Others fail because they overestimate their preparation. Self-awareness gives you balance. It allows you to celebrate your strengths while acknowledging your weaknesses, not as a reason for shame, but as opportunities for growth. When you know you are not good at something, you don't run from it. You either learn it or find someone who compliments you. That is wisdom. Self-awareness also means being honest about your emotions. Too often we ignore how we truly feel. We pretend to be strong when we are broken. We hide our fears instead of confronting them. But growth does not happen in denial. Growth begins when you accept, yes, I am afraid, but I will face it anyway. Yes, I made mistakes, but I will learn from them. Yes, I am struggling, but I am still moving forward. Owning your emotions makes you resilient because you no longer fear vulnerability. You transform it into strength. Let me share a truth. Many people spend their entire lives living someone else's dream because they never ask themselves what they truly want. A young person might choose a career only because their family or society said it was respectable. Years later, they find themselves successful on paper but empty inside. Why? Because they never practiced self-awareness. They never asked, what brings me joy? What makes me feel alive? What impact do I want to leave in this world? When you begin with self-awareness, you save yourself from living someone else's version of success. Another powerful gift of self-awareness is clarity. When you know who you are and what you stand for, decisions become easier. You no longer say yes to everything just to please others. You no longer chase every trend just because the world is running after it. Instead, you choose what aligns with your values. You know what to accept, what to reject, and what to focus on. This clarity reduces stress and brings peace. In education and professional life, self-awareness becomes your biggest strength. Imagine a student who knows he learns best visually. Instead of wasting hours reading pages of text, he uses diagrams, videos, and visual aids, and suddenly his performance improves. Imagine a leader who knows she struggles with public speaking but excels at strategy. Instead of hiding, she works on her weakness while using her strength to guide her team. In both cases, self-awareness unlocks potential that ignorance would have kept hidden. Now remember, self-awareness is not about becoming perfect. It is about becoming real. It is about knowing that you are a masterpiece in progress. When you know yourself, you no longer need to copy others. You no longer feel the need to wear masks to fit in. You embrace your uniqueness and walk confidently in your own path. And when you do that, you begin to grow in ways that shock even yourself. So, my friends, if you truly want to focus on yourself and shock everyone with your transformation, begin with this step: know yourself. Not the self that others see, but the self that lives in your quiet moments, the self that dreams when no one is watching, the self that still believes in possibilities. Because the day you become fully aware of who you are is the day you start becoming who you were meant to be. One of the most silent destroyers of inner peace and personal growth is comparison. From the moment we open our eyes to the world, we are told to look at others, what they are doing, what they have achieved, how far they have gone. In school, children are compared to classmates. At home, siblings are compared to one another. In society, people are measured against neighbors, relatives, and colleagues. Slowly, without even realizing it, comparison becomes a habit, a lens through which we start viewing our own worth. But the truth is, comparison steals joy, kills creativity, and blinds us from seeing our unique journey. When you compare yourself with others, you are judging your chapter 2 against someone else's chapter 20. You are ignoring the years of struggle, effort, and sacrifice that the other person may have gone through. And in doing so, you fail to value your own progress. You may be moving forward, but because someone else seems to be ahead, you convince yourself that you are failing. This is one of the biggest lies comparison teaches us, that your growth is meaningless if it does not look like someone else's success. The real measure of growth is not how much you have achieved compared to others, but how much you have grown compared to who you were yesterday. If you were fearful last year, but today you have more courage, that is progress. If you struggled to express yourself in the past, but today you can speak a little more confidently, that is progress. If yesterday you doubted yourself, but today you believe in your abilities even a little more, that is progress. These small but significant shifts are invisible in comparison to others, but they are monumental when compared to your past self. Think about a seed planted in the soil. The mango tree does not look at the rose bush and feel insecure. The rose bush does not look at the towering oak and feel ashamed. Each grows at its own pace, in its own season, carrying its own beauty. But we human beings constantly forget that principle of nature. We forget that just as no two flowers bloom at the same time, no two lives unfold in the same way. Your timeline is not supposed to match anyone else's. You are not late, you are not behind. You are simply on your journey, and that journey is yours alone. Comparison also traps us in the endless cycle of competition. Instead of learning from others, we begin to envy them. Instead of celebrating their success, we feel threatened by it. What we don't realize is that every person is fighting battles we cannot see. The person you compare yourself to may have advantages you don't know of, but they may also have struggles you would never want to carry. When you detach from comparison, you free yourself from this invisible prison. You start to see others not as competitors but as sources of inspiration. Their journey no longer intimidates you, it teaches you. This detachment is especially important in the age of social media. Every day, we scroll through curated pictures of perfect lives, smiling faces, luxury vacations, dream jobs, flawless families. What we forget is that these are highlight reels, not the full story. No one posts their failures, their nights of doubt, their private struggles. When you compare your behind the scenes to someone else's highlight reel, you will always feel like you are losing. That is why it is crucial to remind yourself, what you see is not the whole truth. The only fair comparison is with the person you used to be. Detaching from comparison does not mean becoming complacent or stopping your growth. It means shifting your focus from "I must be better than them" to "I must be better than me." When you adopt this mindset, your energy is no longer wasted in jealousy or self-pity. Instead, it is invested in self-improvement. You start celebrating your small victories, appreciating your unique journey, and building a life that is authentic rather than imitated. Imagine waking up every day with the mindset that your only mission is to be a better version of yourself than yesterday. Imagine how peaceful life would feel if you stopped racing against others and simply started running your own marathon. You wouldn't feel the need to rush. You would simply keep moving forward step by step. And here's the miracle. When you focus on yourself in this way, you not only grow, but you also inspire others. People around you start noticing your calm, your confidence, and your progress. Without even realizing it, you become a source of light for those who are still trapped in the darkness of comparison. There is also a deeper truth here. Comparison limits your potential. When you are busy trying to be like someone else, you shrink yourself into their shadow. But when you stop comparing, you create the space to discover your own greatness. Maybe your talent lies in a completely different field. Maybe your success is meant to come in a different season. Maybe your contribution to the world is not to be the next version of someone else, but to be the first, original version of you. So, if you truly want to shock everyone with your growth, detach from comparisons. Don't measure your life with the yardstick of someone else's achievements. Measure it with the quiet victories of your own journey. Remember that progress is deeply personal. It is about the courage you build, the resilience you develop, the kindness you cultivate, the wisdom you gain. No one else can live your life just as you cannot live theirs. When you stop comparing, you start focusing. When you start focusing, you start growing. And when you grow authentically, silently, at your own pace, you eventually reach a place where the world looks at you, not with doubt or dismissal, but with surprise. Because nothing shocks people more than someone who refused to compete with others, yet still rose beyond every expectation. When we talk about growth, success, or transformation, most people look for motivation. They look for that one video, that one book, that one speech that will light a fire in their hearts and push them to act. And yes, motivation is powerful. It can move you, it can inspire you, it can remind you of what is possible. But here's the reality: motivation is temporary. It is like a spark that shines brightly for a moment but fades as quickly as it appears. If you build your life only on motivation, you will always be chasing moments of inspiration and losing momentum in between. The real key is consistency. Consistency is the quiet, often unglamorous effort that compounds into results. Think of a student who wants to excel in academics. He might watch a motivational video and feel excited to study all night for one day. But if he spends the next 10 days doing nothing, that one night effort will not bring him success. On the other hand, if he studies 1 hour every single day without fail over months, the knowledge he gains will transform his performance. That is the power of consistency. Small, repeated actions are far stronger than occasional bursts of effort. Consistency is not about doing everything perfectly every day. It is about showing up even when you don't feel like it. Motivation depends on emotions, but emotions are unpredictable. Some days you wake up feeling strong, other days you feel tired, uninspired, or even hopeless. If you rely on motivation alone, those low days will destroy your progress. But if you rely on consistency, you will still move forward. Even if the step is small, it is still a step forward. Over time, those steps create a journey that no burst of motivation could ever achieve. Let's take an example from fitness. Many people join a gym in January with huge excitement. They feel motivated, they buy new workout clothes, and for the first 2 weeks they exercise with passion. But soon the motivation fades, the routine feels boring, and they stop. Months later, they look back and wonder why they didn't achieve their fitness goals. The truth is not that they lacked motivation, but that they lacked consistency. Compare this with a person who does not start with grand plans, but simply commits to 20 minutes of exercise daily. Rain or shine, busy or free, they show up for those 20 minutes. A year later, their body and health are transformed. Not because they were always motivated, but because they were always consistent. Consistency also builds trust not only with others, but also with yourself. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, you build inner confidence. You begin to believe in your own words. You no longer say, "I will do this," and then fail to follow through. Instead, your mind starts to recognize that you are dependable, that you finish what you start. This self-trust is one of the most powerful outcomes of consistency. On the other hand, when you constantly start and stop, your own mind begins to doubt you. You lose faith in yourself because deep down, you know you don't follow through. That is why consistency is not just about results. It is about building character. There is another hidden gift of consistency. It creates momentum. At the beginning of any journey, effort feels heavy. Progress feels slow. You may feel like nothing is changing, but as you keep going, the effort starts to feel lighter, the progress starts to become visible, and the results begin to multiply. Just like pushing a heavy wheel, it takes effort to get it moving, but once it rolls, it moves faster with less effort. Consistency is what gets the wheel rolling in your life. Motivation may start it, but only consistency keeps it moving. Consider great achievers in any field: athletes, artists, scientists, entrepreneurs. They are not always motivated. They are human beings just like us. They feel lazy, discouraged, even hopeless at times. What separates them is not endless motivation, but relentless consistency. An athlete trains daily, even when tired. A writer writes every morning, even when inspiration is absent. A musician practices their craft daily, even when they don't feel like it. Over time, these daily acts of discipline lead to mastery, and mastery shocks the world. Consistency also teaches patience. In a world that celebrates instant success, we often forget that real transformation takes time. Seeds take time to grow, muscles take time to build, skills take time to sharpen. Consistency is the bridge between planting and harvesting. Without it, you give up before the results arrive. That is why many people stop just before success, was about to come. They lacked the patience that consistency demands, but those who persist, those who show up daily without demanding immediate results, are the ones who eventually reap the rewards. What makes consistency hard is that it is boring, it is repetitive, it doesn't give you the instant thrill that motivation gives. But it is exactly in this repetition that greatness is built. Brick by brick, habit by habit, day by day, you may not notice the change while it is happening. But one day, the wall is built, the habit is formed, the transformation is visible. And when others look at you, they call it sudden success. But you know the truth, it was not sudden. It was the result of consistency. So, if you want to shock everyone, don't just wait for motivation. Anyone can be motivated for a day, but very few can be consistent for months or years. Focus on small actions you can repeat daily, even when you don't feel like it. Show up even if imperfectly. And over time, your consistency will create results so powerful that they will silence every doubt, every critic, every voice that once said you couldn't do it. In life, there are many things that can be taken away from you: money, possessions, positions, even people. But there is one treasure no one can ever steal: what you know and what you can do. That is why the wisest investment you can ever make is not in material wealth but in learning and skills. Knowledge and abilities are the only assets that grow the more you use them. And they are the only companions that walk with you through every season of life. Think about it. If you lose your job today, what will help you rebuild? Not the title you once had, not the applause you once received, but the skills you carry within you. If your circumstances change, it is your knowledge and adaptability that will open new doors. This is why education should not end with school or college. True education is lifelong. The world is constantly changing, industries are evolving, and opportunities are shifting. If you stop learning, you stop growing. If you stop growing, you are left behind. Many people make the mistake of thinking learning is only about formal education. But real learning extends far beyond classrooms. Every experience, every conversation, every failure, and every challenge carries a lesson. The key is to remain a student of life, to be curious, humble, and open to growth. When you adopt this mindset, every day becomes an opportunity to expand your knowledge and sharpen your skills. Investing in learning also means taking responsibility for your growth. Don't wait for someone else to teach you, guide you, or train you. In the age we live in, knowledge is everywhere: books, courses, lectures, podcasts, online resources. If you are truly hungry to learn, you will always find a way. But if you rely only on what is handed to you, your growth will always be limited. Successful people are those who take ownership of their learning. They don't just ask, "What can I get?" They ask, "What can I learn?" And skills. Skills are the tools that turn knowledge into impact. You may know many things in theory, but until you can apply them, they remain unused potential. For example, reading about leadership is knowledge, but leading a team through a real challenge is skill. Studying communication techniques is knowledge, but practicing public speaking until you inspire others is skill. The world values skills because they create results. That is why you must continuously practice, refine, and expand your abilities. One of the biggest mistakes people make is relying only on natural talent. Talent may give you a head start, but without learning and practice, it fades. On the other hand, even if you begin with no obvious talent, consistent learning and skill building can take you further than you ever imagined. History is full of people who were not considered gifted, but who disciplined themselves to learn, to practice, to grow, and eventually outshined even the most talented. The difference was not talent, the difference was investment. Investing in skills also gives you independence. When you know how to do something well, you don't have to depend on others to create opportunities for you. You can create opportunities for yourself. A person who has learned to communicate effectively will always find a way to connect, persuade, or inspire. A person who has learned digital skills can work across borders beyond traditional limits. A person who has mastered problem solving will always be valuable in any situation. The more skills you have, the freer you become. There is also a deeper truth. Learning and skills give you confidence. It's not about trying harder in bed, it comes from actually knowing. When you walk into a room with knowledge and ability, you don't need to shout or prove yourself. Your competence speaks for you. And in moments of crisis, when everything else fails, your skills become your anchor. That is why some people remain calm even in storms. They trust what they have built within themselves. But here is something important to understand. Learning requires humility. You cannot learn if you believe you already know everything. Many people stop growing because their ego tells them they are already good enough. But the truly great never stop learning. They read, they ask questions, they seek mentors, and they practice their craft even when they are already successful. That humility to remain a student is what keeps them ahead. Failure, too, is a powerful teacher if you are willing to learn. Every failure shows you what doesn't work, and in that lesson lies the seed of future success. If you see failure as the end, you stop. If you see it as feedback, you grow. The difference again lies in your willingness to learn. When you treat life as a classroom, every mistake becomes a lesson, and every lesson becomes a step toward mastery. So if you want to shock everyone, don't focus on showing off what you already know. Focus on becoming a person who is always learning, always improving, always sharpening their skills. While others are busy seeking validation, you will be busy building value. And when the time comes, your knowledge and skills will speak louder than any title, any award, or any recognition. In the end, everything you invest in outside yourself can be lost, but everything you invest within yourself multiplies. Your mind and your abilities are like fertile soil. The more seeds you plant, the greater the harvest you will reap. And that harvest will not only feed your dreams, but also inspire others to believe in the power of lifelong learning. One of the most exhausting battles people fight in life is the battle of proving themselves to others. We live in a world where everyone has an opinion about who you are, what you can do, and even what you cannot do. Some will underestimate you, some will doubt you, and some will criticize you no matter how hard you try. The natural reaction is to argue, to defend, to explain, and to convince them of your worth. But here is the truth. No matter how strong your arguments are, you can never silence every critic with words. What truly silences them is not argument, but action. Silence paired with consistent results is more powerful than the loudest debate. When you argue with people who underestimate you, you are giving them your energy. You are saying, your opinion matters enough for me to fight against it. The more you try to prove yourself, the more control you hand over to them. And ironically, the louder you argue, the more they resist. People are rarely convinced by words alone. They are convinced by results they cannot deny. That is why silence is a weapon. When you choose not to argue, but instead to focus on your growth, you rob your critics of the attention they seek. You redirect your energy from proving to improving. Think about a student who is told, "You will never be good at math." If he argues with his teacher or classmates, nothing changes. But if he quietly starts practicing daily, seeking help and building his skills, one day his results will shock everyone. His success will become the loudest response to those who once doubted him. That is how silence speaks louder than arguments. Because silence carries humility, patience, and proof. Silence also preserves your peace. Arguments often turn into battles of ego, not truth. You may start with the intention of explaining yourself, But soon the discussion becomes about winning, not understanding. And in trying to win, you lose your calm, your focus, and your time. But when you choose silence, you protect your inner energy. You remind yourself that not every opinion deserves a reaction. You learn to separate between what people say and what you know to be true about yourself. That inner stillness becomes a shield, and in that shield you grow. In professional life, this principle is even more valuable. You may face colleagues who doubt your capability or superiors who underestimate you. If you spend your time defending yourself, you waste opportunities to actually perform. But if you let your work speak, you will earn respect without demanding it. People may question your words, but they cannot question undeniable results. Over time, even the harshest critics are forced to acknowledge consistency and excellence. History gives us countless examples of people who let their silence and actions speak. Scientists who were ridiculed for their discoveries, artists who were ignored for their creations, leaders who were doubted for their vision. All of them faced critics. If they had spent their lives arguing, their contributions might have been lost in endless debates. Instead, they poured their energy into their work. And today, we remember them not for what they argued, but for what they accomplished. Their silence was not weakness, it was focus. But let us be clear, silence does not mean passivity. It does not mean accepting injustice or tolerating disrespect. It means choosing your battles wisely. It means understanding that you don't need to respond to every opinion. Some situations require you to speak up with courage, but many more require you to stay silent and let your growth become your answer. Wisdom lies in knowing the difference. Silence also teaches humility. When you don't rush to defend yourself, you learn to listen. Sometimes criticism carries truth, and silence gives you the space to reflect on it. Instead of being blinded by pride, you ask, is there something in this for me to learn? If yes, you grow. If not, you move on without wasting energy. Either way, silence keeps you in control. Another gift of silence is that it surprises people. Most critics expect a reaction. They expect you to be defensive, angry, or broken. When you respond with silence, they lose their power. They cannot feed off your reaction. Instead, they are left wondering what you are up to, and when, in time, your success appears, the shock is greater because it was unexpected. You didn't promise, you didn't argue, you didn't announce. You simply worked and then you showed. That is why silence is such a powerful form of strength. In personal relationships, too, silence can heal. Not every conflict requires shouting or endless explanations. Sometimes silence gives space for reflection, for emotions to settle, for truth to emerge naturally. Words spoken in anger often leave wounds, but silence can prevent damage. And when combined with action, kindness, patience, responsibility, silence communicates far more than arguments ever could. So the next time you feel the urge to defend yourself against doubt or criticism, pause and remember this. You do not need to prove anything to anyone. The only person you need to prove yourself to is the one in the mirror. If you know you are growing, if you know you are working, if you know you are becoming better, that is enough. Your results will eventually speak. And when they do, they will speak so loudly that no argument will be necessary. In the end, silence is not emptiness, it is strategy. It is the choice to put energy where it truly matters. It is the discipline of turning away from noise and turning inward to build yourself. And when you focus on yourself with such quiet determination, you shock everyone not by your words, but by your transformation. People will always put you in boxes. They will judge you by where you come from, what you look like, what you own, or what you have achieved so far. Some will set limits for you, not because they know your potential, but because they cannot imagine you beyond their own perspective. They will say, you can't do this, or this is not for people like you, or stay within your limits, and if you are not careful, you may begin to believe them. But here is the truth: the world does not decide your limits. You do. When you focus on becoming the best version of yourself, you eventually grow into someone even you didn't expect. And that transformation shocks everyone who once doubted you. What does it mean to shock everyone? It does not mean proving them wrong for the sake of revenge. It means surprising them with growth so extraordinary that their doubts no longer matter. Imagine the quiet student in class whom no one notices, who one day grows up to lead a company. Imagine the child told they would never succeed, who one day becomes the hope of their family. Imagine the person underestimated for their weaknesses, who later turns those weaknesses into their greatest strengths. That is the power of becoming the unexpected version of yourself. But how do you get there? You begin by refusing to accept the limits others place on you. People may say you are too young, too old, too inexperienced, too ordinary. But those are their opinions, not your reality. You must learn to see beyond the labels. Your future is not defined by where you stand today, but by how committed you are to growing. Every great story of transformation begins with someone others dismissed. What changed their destiny was not approval from others, but the decision to grow despite doubt. Growth, however, does not happen overnight. It is the result of consistent effort, patience, and resilience. You shock people not by making sudden noise, but by showing steady progress until the day your transformation is undeniable. Think of a seed buried in the soil. No one sees its struggle in the dark. For months, it grows roots in silence. But when the time comes, it breaks through the earth and grows into a tree. People may call it sudden, but you know it was years of hidden work. Your journey is the same. You shock everyone not because you appeared out of nowhere, but because you worked in silence until your growth could no longer be ignored. One of the most powerful ways to become the unexpected version of yourself is to turn your pain into strength. The world expects pain to break you, but you can choose to let it build you. Failures can become lessons, rejections can become redirection, struggles can become resilience. Every scar you carry can become a symbol of survival. When you rise not despite your difficulties but because of them, you shock the world with your ability to transform suffering into success. Another key is to embrace your uniqueness. The world tries to mold you into its definition of success. But when you dare to be different, you surprise everyone. Maybe you choose a path that others fear. Maybe you create something that has never been done. Maybe you speak a truth that others are too afraid to voice. Your uniqueness is your power. Do not bury it to fit in. Instead, nurture it until it grows strong enough to stand out. The world may not understand you at first, but eventually it will recognize the light that only you could bring. Shocking everyone also requires patience. People often expect instant success, but real transformation takes time. If you rush only to impress others, you will burn out. But if you grow patiently for yourself, you will one day achieve something so remarkable that even the ones who doubted you will have no choice but to acknowledge it. Remember, silence, patience, and consistency are the building blocks of unexpected success. And when the moment arrives, when your growth is visible, when your results are undeniable, let your success speak for itself. Do not waste time saying, "I told you so." The shock you create is not in your words, but in your transformation. People who once doubted you will stand amazed, not because you argued with them, but because you quietly became someone they never imagined you could be. But the most beautiful part of shocking everyone is this: you also shock yourself. You discover strengths you didn't know you had, courage you never thought possible, and possibilities you never dreamed of. You realize that you are not limited by the story others wrote about you. You are the author of your own destiny. And that realization gives you the freedom to dream bigger, rise higher, and live fully. So if the world doubts you, let it. If people underestimate you, let them. If they put limits on your future, let them. Do not waste your energy fighting their opinions. Instead, invest your energy in growth, in learning, in resilience, in becoming. Focus on yourself so deeply that one day you stand in front of them, not with arguments, not with explanations, but with undeniable transformation. And in that moment, the silence of your growth will echo louder than 1,000 words, and the shock on their faces will be your quiet victory.